Okay, I will call the meeting of the Norfolk School Building Committee for Monday, August 19th, 2024 to order. So first, we have two sets of minutes to approve.
Which we do not have. I am delayed. I'm going to see if I can seek some assistance from your clerical support to get some of these minutes out. We're buried trying to get ready for opening, so I didn't get to get them.
No, that's okay. I was wondering if I missed something. So
Yeah, no, you did, but so did I. So I'm going to see if we can work on that.
Here, do you have an extra set of the pack or anything with you?
Yeah,
I'll grab it. Oh, yeah.
we will have them for the next meet, but
Thank you.
perfect. All right, so that's 1 and 2, very easy, quick, seamless even. So then we have discussion of next steps, and I believe, Justin, you have some documentation.
Yeah. So would you like me to?
yeah, so when we wrapped up at our last meeting, we asked Justin to investigate a few different things around pricing for the modular option that would be attached to the school building as well as the brick and mortar. And we had asked about whether or not the security system was included, security cameras, reinforced glass for the vestibule, and what impact that might have on the final prices. So he has information on that to share with us. And then he can walk through what they proposed as the final cost for each of the options, or the estimated cost. And then we have information from Todd Lidmark. We were requested to look at the tax impact of each option, as well as what other debt might be coming off the town books. So we can look at that next. But Justin, do you want to talk about the research you did first?
Yeah, absolutely. So the two items, security-related items, one being interior cameras, the other being the delayed entry film glass. And I looked back at the estimates and did confirm that the cameras were included in those numbers. Based upon typical school design, they're included, so those numbers are already in there. I also did a little bit of research and digging based upon historical data for the added cost of the delayed entry glass. And based upon the square footage of what it would be, it was a very, very, very small percentage of the total estimated cost. So ultimately, there was no real change to the total budget because there was enough, whether it be rounding, contingencies, etc. It was a small, fractions of a fraction of a percentage within everything. So what I provided superintendent and what was in the packets are essentially two memos and two laying out the costs, or the anticipated costs of what it would take to move the project forward. They're both set up the exact same way, including even down to the extra services. Extra services are the exact same for both of them. So what I can do now is I can run through, we'll go through the new construction option, and then it's the same format, the same type of information for the other options as well. So I'm going to highlight the actual bold values because that's in reality what all of this conversation is about, and I'll elaborate a little bit on them. So moving to the second paragraph, hard cost for construction, $35,200,000. That was based upon the estimates that were updated in June when we re-estimated the actual brick and mortar option, as well as when we estimated the modular option. So that is the hard cost of the project. Now, that is not the total project budget because you have all of these soft costs. So soft cost is typically a percentage of the construction cost, of the hard costs. At this point, we would estimate it would be 27%, and that is based upon industry standard with an additional, typically industry standard is 25%, but because it is an ad reno tying into the existing, we would recommend including an additional 2% because of the unknowns when you're tying into the existing building. So that is valued at 27% of the hard costs. So the soft cost value for the new construction would be $9.5 million. That brings your total project budget to the $44,700,000 at the bottom of the page there, as far as the total cost of everything included. We go to the next page, breaking down some of those items within that $9.5 million. So the designer's fee and the OPM, the owner's project manager fee breakout, is what follows. So designer fees are typically a percentage of the construction cost. And what we've identified here is 3.5, just over $3.5 million for designer fees. And that isn't just AI3's fees. That is our entire team of civil, landscape, structural, mechanical, plumbing, electrical, that whole list there, 20-plus consultants, that is included within that, that designer fee for basic services within that $3.5 million. Additionally, there are some extra services. And what we've done here is consistent with MSBA projects of what, and we understand this isn't an MSBA project, but typical for clarity and for, just for reference, we break out our extra services. So these are typically above and beyond what is included within our basic services. And these are items, as mentioned here, like site surveys, geotech borings, traffic analysis, wetland analysis, all of these additional items that are typically above and beyond our basic fee. So utilizing historical data for what these fees should, or where they should land, we're looking at $523,850 for all of these extra services within it. The extra services, as I mentioned, whether it's the modular option or whether it's the stick-built option, remains the same because it's still the same type of information, the same type of investigation that we need to do just to ensure everything works. So that fee stays the same, or value stays the same between both the modulars and the new construction. So if you add both the basic and the extra services up, it equals just north of $4 million for the total component of the design fee. Looking at the owner's project manager, or the OPM fee, again, this is something that we would anticipate being in the 3.5% range, but this is absolutely something that would need to be discussed with an OPM once they are brought on board and or selected. So with a project of this size, it was mentioned at the last meeting, and it was noted that Norfolk doesn't want to be their own OPM. So we would say, just again, based on historical data, somewhere around the 3.5% range, but again, that is all to be determined based upon the firm that is selected. So with that, the actual town meeting budget requests numbers are broken out on the next chunk of this memo. So for town meeting 2024, what we would anticipate is just north of $4.3 million. And that's broken out by the OPM fee and the designer's fees, as well as, and I'll go into those in a little bit more detail, as well as additional soft costs. So this is printing, this is legal review. It's a bucket to draw from for some of these items. Additional OPM contingency, again, not knowing what their final percentage and contract value will be. There's an extra bucket of money there, and then a bid bond noted as $50,000 there. So moving real quick back to the OPM and the designer's fees. These numbers here do not align with the previous total numbers, and that is because this is the phase to bring it through bidding, not through project completion. So this equals 80.5% of the total fee, and that's typically what we allocate for the design services through bidding. So the remaining 19.5% would be for town meeting 2025, when the project goes into construction and ultimately close out. So that's how that breaks out. Our total 100% of our fee is not in this first request. It's split between the two because of where the project is from a phasing standpoint. We anticipated, we applied that same principle to the OPM fee, and again, that's something that would have to be negotiated with them, but just to keep some consistency and parity between the two of those, that is why they're shy of $1 million, where their total fee is north of 1.2. So that's town meeting 2024. Town meeting 2025 on the back. The last sheet here, again, it's approximately just over $40 million. This is the remainder of that total project budget. So this includes the remaining OPM fees, the remaining design fees, any of the soft costs. So if you do the math for design fees and OPM fees and the bid bonds, et cetera, it doesn't equal that 9.5 million. That is because what makes up the remaining of the 9.5 are items like furniture, fixtures, and equipment, technology, as well as construction contingency. That won't actually come into play until you actually start building the building. So that's why that lump of money is included in the town meeting 2025 number. And then obviously whatever the bids come back for the actual construction would be included. So that's why town meeting 2025 is just north of 40 million. And again, that's budgetary planning purposes, but ultimately whatever those numbers come in will really drive what the town meeting 2025 is. Same principles for the modulars, just slightly less because of the lower hard cost, and a lot of the items are based on percentages of the hard cost. So you can see how that breaks out through the course of everything. I won't go line by line or anything like that, but it's, again, the same principles. The 80.5% fees for the fall of 2024, and the remaining 19.5% for 2025. And again, the final 2025 would be the construction cost plus all those remaining soft costs.
Justin, I just want to, for clarification purposes, the modular, just total cost of the project came in just about 3 million under the new construction. And I just want to again confirm, life expectancy of the new construction is 50 years. Life expectancy of the modular with the level that we selected as a committee is 20 years.
Yep, correct.
And again, just to clarify from before, security cameras and all the things that we asked about at the last time are built into the modular construction.
Yes.
So it's the same as the new construction. What's not built in to the project is the reinforced glass. And because of the low cost of doing that, that can be absorbed by the contingency budget in either project.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Anybody- I don't know if
Yeah,
people have
these
questions
are
on that.
apples to apples. Well, as close as they can be, but
I mean, it makes sense.
Questions?
No, I mean, it all, you've explained it very clearly. It all makes perfect sense. I mean, I guess to really drive it home, we're talking about saving $3 million, but losing 3 decades of life expectancy on a building, essentially? Okay.
Okay, the other thing, and Justin, maybe you can help us walk through this. The committee asked if we could have Todd Lindmark do an assessment of the impact to the taxpayer on both projects based on the estimated final numbers. So you can see in your packet, he did for the Freeman Kennedy modular, and again, he listed the soft cost, the hard cost, the total project total, the town funding needed, and looked at what the tax impact would be based on the average single-family home assessed value. So for the modular, he estimated the average tax impact to be $990 a year annually, and that does go down over time, but that would be the initial request. And then he gave an overview of what that would look like depending on the assessed value of the house. He just gave us the average impact. And then he did the same for the new construction, and you can see that comes in about $50 more, a little bit over that. Project soft cost $9,500, hard cost $35 million, with a total project cost of $44,700. Again, about $3 million less than the modular, $3 million more than the modular, and the average impact is $1,000 annually, $1,050 annually for those two. What I also asked Todd if he could provide is a list of other capital projects the town's currently funding that might be coming off of people's tax bill. And this I have to leave Justin to speak to because I'm not sure I can fully understand what's highlighted.
I can speak to it. On the slide there, you have general fund non-exempt funds and then general fund exempt debt. So general fund non-exempt are essentially debt that's covered within the operating budget of the town. So you'll see that there's some, debt that is rolling off there, but I would say for this project that it doesn't really matter. The exempt debt is what matters because this would be an exempt debt project. So you'll see there like the school refunding, public safety, the building, the fire station, and that's where this debt would be associated. So the first thing that's going to come off in the exempt debt is going to be the school refunding in 2031, which rolls off after that year. And then the following year, there's another school refunding project that rolls off. So it's about $700,000 or $800,000 in 2033 that rolls off. But that's what Todd sent over for you all there.
So from a sort of net total cost, we're talking about if we went to a fall town meeting in 2024 for the request for the $4 million, it'd be aggressive to think construction would start a year later. It's probably more like 18 months. Is that correct?
It could possibly, I would say, early spring of 2026.
And the length of time for construction is at least a year, correct?
Yes.
Maybe. So we're looking at this building project, if we brought it forward now, not being done until 2027.
26, 20, yeah, so.
Possibly 28.
Probably occupancy, and I have to do the math, occupancy like September 1 of 2027.
So that school year that starts, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So the school debt comes off in 2031, so there would be 5 years, because you don't start paying, when do you start paying the debt on the project?
Well, it depends how you structure it. I mean, it's tough to say without running through scenarios, but let's say maybe how I would do it if I put my finance director hat on. You're probably going to fund the schematic design. We're probably going to have to do that with debt exclusion as well. So you'll probably do a band for that or something like that. That'll be the following year, or you roll into your other debt. You probably would do this project where you would take pieces of the debt that you need for construction. So it'd probably be a year after. If the town meeting approved it, it'd probably be a year that you start paying the debt.
But not the full amount, or just in chunks?
It really depends. It depends. Some people, it depends how you do it.
Okay.
If you take the full, it
Finance.
depends on the financial climate, because what if the interest rates are extremely low? You might want to take all the funds
Right.
then now,
No, yeah.
right, and lock
Okay.
that in versus the higher rates that we had there. So that one's a hypothetical that it really depends on. I would defer to the finance director and this team once we got to that situation.
Okay.
And the debt that is coming off is only around $632,000. It's
So
not
it's not-
significant.
It's going to be minimal.
Yeah. So the tax impact will be high for those first 4 years, and then will start to diminish, and additional debt will be coming off. Is that how you're?
Yeah, obviously with these projects, we look at the projects themselves. We're probably going to have another debt exclusion for the Tri-County project. So we've got a little bit of debt coming on, but, obviously we just got to take a look at our scenarios, run through with the finance teams and figure out the way to move forward. But there'll be a little bit of debt that comes on for the next few years.
And then looking out, what's the, how old is HOD, right? Is it 35 years?
Olive Day is, I have to look at that. We have another like 15 to 20 years of life expectancy, I would say, on that building. I think it's by the time this is built, I think it'll be 35 years. I think but I want to double check that. I think it's 32 right now, but I'll confirm. Matt, do you know? I don't want to be incorrect.
Yeah, I can look it up.
Yeah. But when we looked at this originally, there's enough useful life left in each Olive Day that we felt the expansion was a better solution
Yeah.
for the short term.
And we will ideally be decreasing some of the wear and tear on that facility if we're
Right.
moving classrooms
Yeah.
out, right? So-
Just think about it, if we have, say, 15 to 25 years left on the H. Olive Day School, the modulars, the lifetime of that is 20 years.
Yeah, you could
We
go
obviously
another-
wouldn't want to take on
Wow.
Right, the entire district. Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Is there any way to, this may be a silly question, but extend the life of HOD, right? So like we'll
Yeah, there's-
theoretically
so-
have 20 years left, but like, with maintenance and less wear and tear, that could
It could extend. There's certainly, so that's the average life expectancy of a school, and Justin, you can jump in and correct me, but there are many schools in use right now across the state that are older than that.
I can think of a
and
couple
have
off
been
the top of my
extended. That's part of why we've had such a hard time securing funding through MSBA. There are a lot of schools that are 80, 90 years that are really in need of repair. Is that accurate?
Yeah, no, that's accurate. A lot of what starts to go over time are the systems, heating, ventilation, those components, plumbing, and then it's wear and tear on surfaces. So depending on how maintenance is upkeeping, which your schools are very well kept up, that definitely extends the life. But it's along the lines of if just keeping an eye on it from a capital maintenance and a capital repair, and if things start to diminish, fixing it right away rather than letting it creep, because
Yep.
that's when it gets more costly. But your big hits are typically your systems.
But it's not like you hit that 50 years and like, you gotta move
The
out.
Everything falls
Absolutely not, yeah.
And one thing I would say that the town was really valued and felt was important was the preventative maintenance plans on all the town buildings. So we had a consultant come in and do a 20-year maintenance forecast, which we've since updated and modified, but that is something that I think we've been really diligent about, because the town invested a lot in building the Freeman. We wanted to make sure that we were preventatively maintaining all of our systems, and I think we've done that really well. I know when we had a team out to look at the building, they were very impressed with the level of maintenance and how the conditions all of our systems were in. So I think that is an asset for the town. Any other thoughts?
I don't think there's anyone in this room that thought it was going to be an inexpensive project, so I think it's in line with what my expectations were.
Yeah, I mean, I think just the sticker on both of them is shocking, right? But I think Midori put it really well with, $3 million for 3 decades. That's...
One thing I would say too is that as we've talked about, the enrollment is continuing to grow. We had to add another first grade. We're going to have 9 first grades next year, which we've typically had 6, just to accommodate the number of kids.
There were 5 the year my son was.
Yeah, and we've gone up to 6, to 7, to 8. Since I've been here, we've never had 9 classrooms at any grade level. And we were over the class policy and had to add the additional classroom. And those classrooms are not small. There's still 19 kids in a classroom with 9 classes. So that enrollment growth is coming. We don't have a music room scheduled for next year. So again, I think it's happening very much the way the demographic study said.
Yeah.
It's starting to grow at the lower grades and then rolling up.
And that bubble year will be in this building before theoretically a building,
Correct.
whatever we do would be
Here.
viable.
Correct.
Right, so.
Yeah. So there is there's going to be, in the next 4 years, significant challenges, which we're already facing down there, but the pressure is building as this rolls up. So I think one of the things that we talked about, and I think, in terms of considering next steps, and I think because we don't have the full committee, we're missing 2 of our community reps, I think it makes sense to hold on voting until we're all together, but I do think we talked about the idea of having a community forum so that we could present the information we've gathered to date and make sure that the public has a chance to ask questions, understand. We haven't presented the demographic study to the community other than the select board and the school committee. All of our meetings are videoed. They're all on NCTV. I don't know, you might know better, Andrew, how many views they're getting or what kind of, but I do think that we should think about at this point, how do we bring people along with understanding the process we've gone through, what we've looked at, why we're where we are now, before we start to plan and think about town meeting and what ask we're moving forward with. So I don't know how other people feel about that.
When does the warrant close for fall town meeting? So maybe we can work back from that from a timing standpoint.
September 5th.
So next week, 2
Oh,
weeks.
yeah,
2 weeks.
Yeah.
But what we have done, what we talked about before was to put a placeholder
Placeholder.
article in.
Okay.
can do that.
Correct. So that we would have time to craft the language and fine tune that.
Because we won't, that's true, we don't put the specific amount of the debt exclusion in, do we? That's not, for some reason, you're not allowed to, you're
It's
just.
not printed in the
It's not
warrant.
printed in the warrant. I just remember this from the last building.
Yeah, I don't think we
that was-
printed it in
Yeah,
the
so
warrant the
it's
last
not, you don't have.
The article allows you to borrow, I think, I can't remember how it was worded, to borrow or
Otherwise fund.
otherwise
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
fund.
I think what we would do is, as long as, the committee and Ingrid are okay with it, I'd like to forward kind of what we had previously before the change at the last town meeting, and that was language that was vetted by town council and so forth, so maybe you utilize that same language and it gives you time to.
Okay.
As a placeholder, and then the committee can continue deliberating.
Until.
I would say the hard deadline, though.
The deadline for printing and going before advisory and all of these things.
The
that's-
board's going to meet September 17th, and then I think the first meeting October. So that first meeting in October is the hard deadline probably, because it has to go to print early October.
And I would think at this point, unless anybody has other information that we feel we need to make a recommendation, I mean, we have the demographic study, we have all the modular, we have the data, we have the tax impact. I feel like we should be pretty close to being ready. I would think at the next meeting, we could vote on what to bring forward and article language, if people are comfortable with that.
Yeah, I think so. Could we try to have the community, what sort of notice are we looking for a community forum? I mean, could we try to, like, in everybody's most convenient time of year, back to school, let's take a weeknight?
Well, what do you guys think? I think it would make more sense for this committee to meet one more time, finalize which of the options we're bringing forward, and then have a community forum. I mean, I think a community forum at the end of September and another one in October, so we have at least 2 meetings prior to town meeting would be helpful.
And meeting with the advisory committee with the recommendation.
Yep.
I agree with that, especially because
Between
if
those
we
two.
get questions, we'll want to be able to circle up, come back at another forum and respond. Sure.
I think that makes sense.
Justin, do you feel on top of the community forums, is there value in having a joint select board school committee meeting where this committee presents the results of the work?
I personally think it's helpful. I think the more the both committees, the committee and the board talks, I think it's better for understanding the project and get the project out there. I'd prefer to see that, but obviously that's dependent on the school committee and select board. I don't think it would be an issue with the select board. I think they would welcome it.
Yeah, I think it would be, I'm thinking maybe if we meet one more time, we finalize the recommendation, then we go to the school committee and select board prior to the community forum.
Like
Then
that.
at least the board, I feel like it should go to those 2 boards before it goes to the public.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
What do people feel about that?
Yeah, I think that's very
makes sense.
reasonable. I think that once there's consensus among our board, I think it's best to just start disseminating as much information in other, I know we've had all of our meetings, but I don't know that everybody's been keeping up over the summer, so the more we can get out and communicate, whether that's with boards or with forums, I think that's helpful, so everyone has information.
In the last go-around, where did you folks, or the folks that were involved at that time, have a community forum or offer
We
that
had
up?
3
You had
last
3.
time. We did 3, correct? 3?
3 or 4, yeah.
Yeah.
We did 3, we were going to have 4, and then...
And the fourth
and then
was
we
canceled.
canceled the 4th one, yeah.
But the scope of the last one was significantly different than this
Yeah.
committee. So we did updates as we went through the design process and each phase of the feasibility study, the traffic study, and all of those are archived and we have a building committee site ready to launch.
Great.
So I think we could get that out in September. That would show the whole history, all of the prior community forums, all of these meetings would be there. And I think we could get that, like the barcode out so people could scan
and leave it at the library and
Yes, once we're ready and we know the decision, we can launch everything so that people can do that historical research if they feel that would benefit them.
And would we have access to, like, any questions that were asked at the time? I'm just
Yeah.
curious, would that inform what potential questions we might get this go-around?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, we could probably pull that together, too. We could probably pull
Just like an
together what
FAQ.
are some
Yeah.
of the questions that we've had
Yeah.
for this board, and with an FAQ kind of document. I think that's something we could generate. I think a lot of the questions, I think one of the disadvantages to how the process went forward, we started this in 2017. We had a demographic study done, we had it updated in 2019. COVID hit, the fire station came in, and we lost momentum.
Yeah.
We went forward with a request to move forward. We did the feasibility, that was funded. We went forward with a request for the big project, and people had forgotten about the need and why. And so I think the length of time kind of worked against us to a degree. I think we had people question the demographic study and whether we'd really see this enrollment, because the pandemic created a shift. So our enrollment pattern was disrupted during that time, and so there was some doubt as to whether it would recover. So I think those questions about the demographic study, we've now had a third one done by an independent consultant. I think there's more confidence in those projections. But questions about that, questions about, I think it's the sticker shock, the tax impact. Have we explored other options? Have we looked at modular, which we have done at this point? We've talked about the negative of a third site being probably more costly and less efficient for the town, as well as no available space that we could house that. So I think those are the kinds of questions, but we could certainly, I could send this committee the preview link to the site, and you can see those public forum question and answer sessions and what we were asked.
great.
There were some questions about water that we got in one.
Yeah.
the
One was
capacity,
water
that's right.
capacity.
Capacity of the town for water for another building. But I think one of the things to think about is, regardless, you have the same number of students.
Yeah.
So there's the same usage rates. But we could certainly put that together for this, and I would think it would be good for this committee to meet before the forum and just,
Yes.
plan for presentations. So does it make sense to try to schedule one final meeting for decision-making in September? And
Yes.
then we can, from there, talk about late September school committee select board joint meeting, if that works, or even mid-September.
Maybe mid,
Yeah, I
because then we
think
can get in
mid
the
would be
community
great.
forum.
Yep.
One in September, one in October.
Yeah, I think it would help to have a couple, so again, we can come back with answers if questions come up before we go to the November town meeting.
And I think the more socialization, the better.
Yep.
I mean,
So what works for,
Would 2 weeks be too soon to try and meet again for people? I know that's Labor Day on the 2nd, but
we could,
that
we
week
have
during
done
that week?
Wednesdays in the past. Like we could shoot for Wednesday the 4th, and then maybe the week of the 16th for school committee and select board.
Both work for me.
Yeah, I can do that as well.
I can do the 4th, sure.
All right, so let's go for Wednesday, September 4th.
But
Does that work for you, Justin?
the board was potentially looking at meeting Wednesday. It's not to say that they will, because they typically don't meet the Labor Day, after Labor Day, which is a Tuesday. I do think we should have it sooner rather than later, though.
Can we do the 5th? I mean,
I could do the
What-
5th.
Fifth gets, I think the 4th makes sense. I'm just telling you, there potentially is a conflict. But I also would tell you kind of where I am right now anyway, because I just wanted to ask something for the next meeting. I think, Ingrid, the last meeting we talked about potentially you would explore the leasing of space and show the costs or something like that.
Yeah.
I think it would be good to have that for the next meeting. But
Yep.
I think no matter what, if I'm here or not, I think when we're looking at the costs of this, it doesn't make any sense to consider the modulars. I think we're just waiting for the rest of the committee to come to make a vote.
Right.
So I feel safe just saying that now. So if there is a conflict on that Wednesday, you kind of know where I'm already at.
Yeah. And I will get that from BICO. It was around, they had to lease space but retrofit things to accommodate.
I think it's just good to have, because it's a question that, just say, we
Yep.
looked at everything.
Yep.
It's good to have that information. But yeah, I think we should have it sooner than later.
The one thing with the leased space, I think we talked about last time, and I think we should be clear on going forward, we would have to lease outside. I don't know of any available space in town
Yep.
that we would be able to lease. We'd be talking about leasing space in another district, a school or something like that. Is that what you were thinking, Justin?
I think that's the only thing that makes sense,
And that
whether
was
it's
voted
Franklin
last
or
time.
Rentham or something like that. I don't think there's anything in town that I've
So
heard.
then we're just running bus routes to,
So there's other costs, so
Yeah, there's other
that's why I
costs.
want to bring it up,
There's other
is that it
costs.
would be, in terms of shared facilities, shared other things, there would be staffing implications. I can certainly get it, but I think we'd have to be clear, there isn't space within Norfolk that I'm aware of.
Correct, I'm not aware of
that would
that.
be available for lease.
I agree, I think it's important to show, and even, there are non-quantifiable issues with that, right? Like, I don't know if I'd want my kid getting on a bus to Franklin, right? Just so, I think but putting the number out there,
Absolutely, so I can get that and have it for the next meeting. Okay. All right, so September 4th, we're going to try for 7 o'clock, does that work? And then, when would the select board meet again? Because school committee would be tentatively the 10th of September. But I'm wondering if we could switch.
Actually, that's funny. So we're meeting tomorrow night, and they're talking about the schedule. I think I can mention this as part of an update that we met, but the two dates that we were looking at were September 4th and September 10th. September 10th would have to be a virtual meeting for them, but if there's a shared meeting, I think that could work. So I'll toss it to the board, but those were two proposed dates.
Okay, so if the 10th work, we could have our meeting, make our final decision, and the following week present to the select board. And I think, Justin, if you guys would be available, because we'd want you to walk through the studies and the options that were considered.
So are you thinking on that scenario, sorry, just so I'm aware, when would the joint meeting work, the following week, to set, like,
the 10th?
the 10th?
If we met on the 4th, or, I think it would be nice to have 2 weeks between, so that we have a little more planning time. If we could do the 18th, I thought you were suggesting that we meet the 4th and then the 10th, because that was your date
Yeah,
for the joint.
yeah, that's what I was saying. I think the board's going to meet, I don't know whether they're meeting the 4th or 10th, but they are definitely meeting September 17th.
So September 17th, we could do as the joint meeting, too.
Sure.
That might make sense. And
That
then we
feels-
meet on the
yeah.
4th, and then the 17th, that gives us a couple of weeks to pull everything together into a presentation for the Select Board and School Committee.
Fantastic.
Because we've already presented the study, the demographic study to both boards, so this is just the updated feasibility piece. Okay. All right, and then we could look at the end of September for a community forum, like the week of the 25th or something. I have to check, I want to check the KP calendar for when they have open houses and compare it with ours. So maybe at the next meeting, we can choose the community forum date, if that's okay, because I don't want to compete against other big things in town.
Yep.
I think that makes sense.
All right, is there anything else that people think we need to have for that meeting, the next meeting? I'll have all the minutes.
When is,
All the videos are up, so if anybody wants to know what was discussed, they can watch. It's very public.
Take
but-
notes.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
refresh my memory, when is town meeting? What?
November 12th.
Okay.
It's on my birthday.
Oh. Happy
Yes,
birthday to
November.
you.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking.
Always drama.
That's right.
And I guess just as it relates to the shift in demographic and the concerns or the feedback from the last time around, do we need to be prepared with anything in terms of what the new folks in town over at the
Restaurant center.
correctional, yeah. If that has I could just see questions, if we
Related to
say,
that.
well,
Yeah.
we have 9 first grades this year, is that being
It's a really good
impacted by that?
question.
Good question.
So with the state's change in policy, we are no longer expecting any students coming to the Norfolk schools from the shelter, because the shelter was changed from an emergency overflow to a respite center. So families can come and they're expected to be there for 5 days max.
Yep.
There's a few exceptions where they could extend their stay, but in a 5-day stay, the students would not be then enrolling here. So I think with the current policy that's in place and the way it's structured, we're not expecting the base date to impact enrollment now or going forward.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that the state doesn't change, like long-term plans or something else doesn't happen. But the way it's structured right now, we don't expect it to have an impact on enrollment any longer, although we did up until end of July, I think.
Yeah, okay. So this is like, the demographics that we're showing are the impact from,
Building, and it was really inward migration that was
Yeah.
having a significant impact. People coming from other urban areas and buying property in Norfolk.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good point to raise, though, because it's definitely going to be brought up. I think you're
Yeah.
going to hear.
I absolutely,
Yeah.
it will absolutely be asked. Yeah, so. All right, so I'll get some information on leasing, and again, as the BICO board just looked at available space in all surrounding areas. So, I can tell you what might be
Yeah.
available that was looked at for that, and what the costs of that were. And then we can, hopefully at the September 4th meeting, vote on a final recommendation and we could have that be a working session, planning what we want to include in the presentation to the select board and the school committee. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Okay. Any things you think, Justin, from what you're hearing, or that we should be prepared for? I do think that we might want to think about it when we're talking about community forums, hosting something. We had before asked about hosting something over at River's Edge in their community room, because there were a lot of questions from people that came from River's Edge who were interested in and invested in the project and wanting to understand the financial impact. So I think the more we can bring information to people, the more people we might reach.
Makes sense. We've done a few things. Whenever, lately now, for town meetings, I've gone over there to talk about the warrant, stuff like that, or I've
Yeah.
gone to the senior center, so, yeah, those.
Yeah, senior center's another place I was thinking about.
Or just holding something in the library even, in the large
Town
community
library,
room
yeah.
would be good, so it's more centralized and
Yep.
Yep.
kind of neutral.
And we could have, I think
Yeah.
having the community forums there might be a good idea,
Yep.
just to start.
And maybe
But
we
is
do
there
one
anything that
more-
you're hearing from the public that we should think about in addressing, or other than concerned about the financial impact?
That's what people are going to bring up.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the main thing that I've heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how, the joint meeting with the school committee and select board, I think that's going to be good and informative for the community, so, yeah, I think the more that we get out there now, if this is the direction that the committee's going to go in, the more we get out there, the more the public knows, I think we'll get more feedback from the committee then.
Okay. All right, so September 4th here in the library, and I will get the minutes caught up, and I will get the lease space cost information together, and we will vote and use some time to plan for the presentation to the school committee and select board. Sounds good?
Great.
Yeah, that's a lot of work in like 9 months. Good job,
It is a
guys.
lot of work. One thing to think about, we can talk about it next time, is there any value, because again, there's been a gap in time. We had the demographer present to the select board and school committee several months ago to inform our work, but I'm wondering now that we're bringing forward a recommendation, if we're going to go back to, we don't believe the demographic, is there value to having the demographer present with us when we present?
I have heard that feedback.
Yeah.
That there's still skepticism around the numbers, which is not, I think we explained it very clearly, but I think
Yeah.
it would only serve us well to have him come back. And
Because in that quote that we had, there was a price for additional visits or follow-up, so it might make sense if we're doing that to have the demographer there to be.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that would make absolute sense, at least at a minimum of one of the community forums,
Yeah.
it absolutely makes sense.
Yeah.
Or at the joint meeting
I'm thinking
as
of the
well.
joint meeting,
Yeah,
too.
I think
Whatever,
that-
yeah, we
Anybody
definitely
else?
should have.
Because even.
Because
I
he
mean, we
could
have
come in
members
virtually,
of
they're
the
from
school
Virginia, but we
Yeah.
could have them
Yeah.
present virtually if that's questioned again.
Yeah, Medora makes, we have new school
There's-
committee members
and there's
as
new
well.
select board
So-
members since
And new
that
select board
presentation.
members.
That weren't at that
So,
presentation,
Yep, I think
so,
it might
okay.
be beneficial for everyone to have a
Totally.
chance to ask any questions they might have.
Yeah.
That's a good
And
point.
I think people
That's a good point. I forgot about
may have been noodling it even after that first meeting, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's good.
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Okay. Would we want him to do a brief recap? Like not the whole presentation, but a recap of the highlights of their study and their findings before we go into just to make sure people are brought up to speed?
For
Of the
the,
demographer?
for the joint meeting?
Yeah.
I think so.
But, I mean, yeah, I would say just an overview.
Pre-freak
of-
out.
Yeah, not
And-
the
and-
weeds of.
No.
Well, and I
the whole
think
thing.
allow people to ask questions if they have them, right? As long as they have the data, that they can read through it.
Okay. That sounds good. All right, so we'd be targeting the joint meeting the week of September 17th with a potential public forum at the end of September. Okay, great.
Anything else?
No, the only other thing I wondered if it would be helpful would be to have Todd project out, like, he's given us what the cost would be in year one. Would it make sense to do a 10-year picture of how that might decline and what that might look like as debt comes off?
I think that would be
We can do
worthwhile.
that, and I think with more time, obviously, I think I can speak to Todd this week and maybe do what that looks like with the assumptions that there are now. Obviously, there scenarios is now, it could be different later, but we could just build out a debt schedule and so you can see how it looks like, assuming whatever the debt might be, 30, 40, whatever it may be. We could do something like that.
I just think it might be helpful because people might want to know what the long-term picture looks like.
Is that how it was presented in previous projects?
Well, back in 2017, when we presented the first study and the recommendation that we move forward with the building expansion, we did look at like what the initial cost would be and how that would change over time as different things came off. And I thought that
For
was
example, like
helpful.
with the fire
We've done it
station,
for a
is that-
fire station.
Okay,
Yeah, there
just
was
that
one
one
where
people are going to be
Most times,
expecting.
yeah, most times
Yeah.
you kind of want to see it,
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
structure.
then that makes sense.
And it
So would
is-
that be
it's-
something you could look at for the September 4th meeting too?
I can handle that one.
Okay, all right.
And it is, I mean, I know it's a challenging conversation, right, because there's always the specter of what else the town could be paying for in addition to,
Yep.
you know, I
Right.
mean, and that was challenging during the fire station conversations, I know, for
Right.
that committee and the moderator at that meeting, because, you know, folks want to ask about the thing we're not talking about, which is the fact that there was a yet undefined school project that was probably going to be happening, so do we know theoretically that there's going to be a debt exclusion for the Tri-County project as well? Sure, probably, maybe, how much, what it's going to look like, you know, I mean, it's the same sort of thing, so I think it's just
Yeah.
making sure we're giving a picture of the world as we know it right now, and we're
Right,
not
what
being too
the assumptions
speculative.
you have in
Yeah.
place, yeah.
It's also if people are used to that format and seeing that and consuming that information, it makes sense to go back at it
Yeah.
the same way so that people can.
I think so too. Great. All right, sounds like we have a plan.
We have a plan. Can I get a motion to close the meeting?
So moved.
Second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you,
Thank you.